Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you. Boy, it's been a little bit since I've been here on YouTube. As I always say, been very active on X, or if you want to call it Twitter still. You can always find me there. I have shared there that I've just been incredibly busy. Fourth quarter here for my company. I'm part of helping drive some revenue for the company, and so I had a lot of work, kind of year end type stuff. Um, and just lots of family stuff. I'm coaching basketball. We've got other family things. You guys know, I've shared that before. There's just seasons of my life where I get a little busy and it's hard to make videos. But boy, we had a big week. I dove very deeply into DD yesterday, spent a lot of time unpacking some things we saw. So I want to do kind of an informational video on what happened yesterday, especially with AMC. I'm going to talk a little bit about GameStop and Bitcoin these last few weeks as well. Mostly this will be an AMC video, but in my mind, they're all starting to wrap together. So thus, the title of the video today is The Hammer of Justice Coming to Shorts of Bitcoin, GameStop, and AMC. So I'm going to do a DD video here unpacking yesterday's offering for AMC and why that is so different. If you're on X, you saw me tweeting about that a little bit. So you saw I left some breadcrumbs saying, wow, this is different. I'm seeing the ripples of different people picking that up and starting to look at it. But so far, I've not seen anyone really share how this thing works. So I want to do that here, and it's bigger, it's complicated, and people kind of saw the dilution yesterday morning, and of course the shills come out of the woodwork. And even look, let's be real. I think good apes went on an emotional arc yesterday. I did. I first saw the announcement, and I'm like, oh man, really now? Let's not do this. And I know many of you had that response. So I don't want to put people in a shill category just because you had a response. I did as well yesterday morning. But here's what happened. As I looked at it, as I did the DD, right? Always do your DD, come back, separate the emotions from the facts, dig through, and what do I always say? Facts over FUD. So we dig through. As I was reading this, my first response was, whoa, this is different. And I kind of said something to that effect on an X post. And then my next response started to be, wait a second, did Adam do something pretty cool here? And then finally, by the time I was done doing the DD, in a way, I almost felt like apologizing to Adam because, we've developed trust over these 4 years. At least I have. Some of you are going to troll me and say, how could you trust him and all that stuff. I do trust him. I remember last year, when we were, so it was like last October, I want to say, of 2023. Remember, we were running to, I don't know, $10 or $11, and we came off of a great Q3, profitable Q3. We had 2 profitable quarters in a row, and there was dilution announced. And I came out and showed you guys, I pointed the way to the next 9 months after that. The fact that the strike was hitting, and I showed you that that would be a 9-month impact, and I kind of did the forecast like I always do, did the entire 2024 forecast. And I told you that actually that dilution made a ton of sense to me at the time. I called it a squirrel gathering nuts. Adam later posted a squirrel, so I liked that connection. I'm not suggesting he was copying me by any means, but I just think we were thinking similarly. And, he kind of signaled sort of the end of all that and coming out of it. But here was the point. At that time, it made sense to me. This time around, I think people were like, whoa, why now? How's this making sense? And so that's what I'm going to do in this video, though. If I got it right last year and I pointed the way forward and showed you an entire year of how it was going to play out, hopefully I've established a little bit of credibility to be able to look past the surface of an announcement and figure out what's going on. And so I'm going to try to share with you just specifically what this filing even says, and then how do I interpret it. So we'll have some facts, we'll have some opinion on that. Before we do, it's always big news when Kitty shows up, isn't it? So you guys saw Thursday, which was, I think, part of yesterday's response by some of us. Again, I got to the place where I feel very positive about this, and that's what I'm going to show you today. But sorry, just seeing some of the font is getting cut off. That's fine. We'll talk about that. Anyway, seeing Kitty post on Thursday, you all saw then what that did to both GameStop and AMC. Let me even back up and breadcrumb something else I'm going to touch on a couple times in this video. You will find a playlist by me called The Great Unwinding, or you would find that hashtag on X, The Great Unwinding. I have said for more than a year now, Bitcoin would do its big run, GameStop and AMC would follow. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that today. Keep that in the back of your mind. And that is what happened, right? So Wednesday, uh, Bitcoin had its big run. I don't quite remember the top. I want to say about 104K, so somewhere north of 100K. And so that was pretty exciting. You would have seen me posting about that, and a lot of other people too. And I do not think it's coincidence then that Kitty shows up the next day. And then the day after that, Adam's got the big filing. So keep connecting all that in your mind. I've told you for more than a year that it was connected. And now you see, I guess I'll say where there's smoke, there's fire kind of a thing. Like you're seeing some smoke signals. Bitcoin finally did the real big run. GameStop and AMC started getting real active, right? So just file that away. And if that, let's put it this way, if I'm right, that should make you incredibly bullish, because it's been my thesis for a long, long time about kind of the cleanup of a lot of things that happened in 2021. So let's look at a few things from Kitty's post here, do a little bit of decoding. I'm not a decoder. I just sort of practice it on my own time, tried to learn over the last couple of years. I'll show you a couple things, and I'm going to keep some to myself. So by now you know sort of the obvious surface thing. First off, time, right? So all right, hey, it's time. But Kitty is not a surface level person, in my opinion. He is, frankly, I think, a genius encoder for the decoders. And so is Adam and a couple others that I see out there. And so you got to go past the surface. First off, this was the 2006 Person of the Year Time magazine, so it has a little bit of a different cover when you look at it. And what's missing in particular is the word you. So in 2006, Time magazine had said you are the person of the year. And there was a lot to unpack about that. So that's kind of interesting. Also interesting, this is just my own kind of, It was 15 years from, so if this Time magazine was 2006, it was 15 years from that to 2021 when we had what I'll call the sneeze. And then interesting too, you got 109 on here, right? There's a lot to 109. You could kind of say January 09. So Bitcoin comes out January 09. I've been telling you the connection to Bitcoin and some of what we're going to do. And so it's interesting that it's 15 years from 06 to 21. It's also 15 years from 09 to now. So that's kind of interesting. Maybe Kitty's drawing out something about, 15 years. Adam has said time matches on, some of that kind of stuff. Also just interesting, if you go to Gematria, some of you have seen some of those types of decodes. 109, I'm showing you in quotes, has Satoshi as one of the results. And 420, of course, probably a lot of you already know that has Roaring Kitty as one of the results. So to me, that's kind of a nod to unity. I think Kitty perhaps seeing the same things that I'm seeing. I don't mean to compare us. He sees a lot more than I see. He's perhaps the most advanced trader we've seen maybe ever. But nonetheless, on this particular point, maybe we both see this sort of 15-year connection, and he's kind of, I don't know, it's almost like an online handshake, a nod to Satoshi and connecting the two of them. That's just kind of a sign of unity in my mind. I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm just sharing that with you. There's a lot of other decodes from this. Frankly, you can get like a half dozen or more other things from this, but those I'm going to go ahead and stay coy and keep to myself. All right, so let's get to the DD. You're going to see a lot of terms here. I would highly recommend, if you wanted to, you know how I say on my channel and on Twitter or X, no trust me bros around here. So I'm not going to ask you to trust me. I want to just share with you that everything I'm going to show you here now for the most of the rest of this video is directly from the filing. So you could go find that filing. I have alerts on that I even get an email link every time AMC files something or has a press release. And so in the email, I was able to just go directly to it. You can go to the SEC's Edgar website. You can go to AMC's Investor Relations website. So I encourage you to fact check me, to go ahead and look at that filing, read a little bit. But what I'm going to give you is try to put it in plain speak, in sort of just regular person's English language. Because as I read through it, I'm telling you, I had to read this thing twice myself. If you read truly the whole thing, it's 91 pages. There's about 20 plus pages that are sort of the meat of it, but then there's a bunch more from Goldman and some other stuff. And so I'm just admitting to you, it's pretty dense. So I would say, fact check me, go read it. You'll find sections that I'm going to refer to, but also I'm going to try to break it down and make it simple here today. So some terms. You're going to see this is a forward contract. That was one of my first posts yesterday where I just said, hey, wait a second. This isn't just your run-of-the-mill dilution announcement, stock selling. there's something different here. That was my first clue, like, whoa, what's going on here? You're going to read about a master confirmation agreement. Of course, you've heard of hedging, but it's worth understanding a little more. What does that mean in this context? You're going to learn something called a forward seller and a forward buyer. I'm going to talk about all this today, and a forward counterparty, just some more language around that. Note here, I'm already telling you a little bit. The buyer is long and the seller is short in this sort of forward contract. We're going to talk about hedging shares. We're going to talk about something that they have a right to rehypothecate. And then just bottom line, what does this mean to AMC? So all of that was in these 90 pages yesterday that I'm now going to talk about a little bit too. And you're going to, as I give you kind of the puzzle pieces, then I try to put it together into one picture, you're going to see why I ended up going on this emotional arc of from a why now response all the way to, oh my gosh, let me stand up and applaud Adam. This is amazing. So that's where you're going to find me by the end of this. All right. So first off, you saw that it's with Goldman. All right. So Goldman Sachs, or I'm just going to kind of call them GS here. They can be either or. So there's two things that can happen here. They can either be a sales agent. That is your classic. They can sell shares at the market price. Just sell some shares and, kind of have a fee for being a sales agent. Okay. So that's just your normal, what we've done before. And that's AMC and Goldman leaving kind of an option for some of these shares. So let me go back even. It was 50 million shares, right? So if there's this 50 million share offering, of those 50 million, some piece of them Goldman can just sell to any party, basically. There's some boundaries around that, but let's just generally, for the sake of argument, say they can kind of sell to anybody who wants to buy those shares and be a sales agent. That's the vanilla old school thing we've seen before. But the lion's share of the language here is around them being a forward seller of hedging shares. So we're going to unpack that. And why don't we even just jump to how does this work? All right, so AMC agrees to sell shares of common stock in each forward. So there's kind of an agreement, the contract. Remember, we called this a forward contract. So AMC and Goldman, basically AMC says, okay, Goldman, you can go do some stuff and I will commit to giving you those shares when it's time, right? So AMC agrees to sell shares of common stock in each forward. What's this forward thing? Okay, so Goldman, the forward party, they've got this pledge up to the max shares deliverable. I'm using some language from the filing here. That pledge is them saying, we're going to take these shares. So, right, AMC agrees, I'm going to sell you the shares. Goldman says, I promise I'm going to buy these shares. But they haven't really bought them yet. They don't kind of hold the shares, if I've understood this right. And by the way, actually, disclaimer before we go through any more of the rest of this video. I am not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a Wall Street expert. You are listening to a guy online. I do have 2 master's degrees in business. I've told you guys that, but that doesn't make me an expert on some of this stuff, okay? So let's just disclaim all of that. I have a background in sort of operations, finance, supply chain, planning, forecasting, a lot of stuff like that. That does not make me an expert on a forward agreement. I had to go do all kinds of DD yesterday to try to see if I could get to a right understanding of this. So it's going to be okay for you to kind of question some of this stuff and not to just trust me, bro. Okay, so let me keep going. All right, so Goldman and AMC have this agreement. Like Goldman says, all right, I'm going to buy these shares. AMC says, okay, I'm going to give them to you. And we're going to talk about kind of time boundaries and prices and stuff here in a minute too. But I want you to notice these 2 sub-bullets here. So this is Goldman's side. Goldman has this right to rehypothecate. Notice that I put in parentheses, basically we're talking about selling short. Goldman says, all right, AMC, in the future, I'm going to take these shares from you, but I'm already going to go ahead and sell them today, even though I don't really have them yet. That's just short selling, right? Selling what you don't have. A lot of us have an issue with that. But hang on with me, because by the end of this, I think you're going to see what I see that is going to, well, it makes me feel bullish. So, because your ears perk up, right? And you go, wait a second, AMC is letting Goldman short us, right? So that just sounds weird on the surface, but hang with me and go through the whole thing. You need the full picture before you react. Okay, so Goldman can rehypothecate these pledged shares. They can sell them forward. So let's go back to these terms. Forward seller. Goldman becomes the forward seller. And so what did I tell you? I said the buyer is long, the seller is short. Goldman is a forward seller of these pledged shares. And there's going to be an initial hedging period. That's what this is. they're basically hedging. But what the heck are they hedging? Well, actually, I'll get to that. Let's come back to that. So Goldman is first selling short, right? And think about too, we saw our price go down yesterday, didn't we? I have a feeling this has already started, and I'm going to explain that too. So this hedging activity, it's in the filing. Goldman has full on said to AMC, and AMC has passed that along to us in the filing. There's this language that says, and again, I'll put this in English instead of the legalese. Hey, Goldman told us that when they're doing their hedging, it could have a negative impact on our price for a minute while they're doing that. Okay. Or suppress increases in the stock. So now again, you're hearing, if you were just reading this, at this point, you're like, what the heck? Why are we doing this? This is bad. But again, hang with me, because that's not the end of the story. Goldman also said, hey, when we do this hedging, this short selling, this forward selling, we're also, and I do not miss this, guys, it will also purchase shares from the open market to hold, which will drive the price back up. And I'm going to show you something in a minute that was going to tell you that, you know how they're selling shares forward. I just talked about that. Now they're buying these on the market, but they're telling us actually overall they're going to be buying more than they hedge. We'll come back to that. So basically, the bottom line note here on this page, note that Goldman is pre-selling shares, and they're buying shares from the market right now. And then later, we're gonna talk about how does this all kind of how does this transaction close in the future. Okay, but this is what I was just telling you not to miss. I'm showing you a screenshot from the filing because I really want you to see this. So this is basically Goldman. So see how this forward counterparty and all this expects its initial hedge position. That's that forward sale, that short selling. Its initial hedge position to be substantially less than the number of shares underlying such forward. They're going to buy a lot more shares long than they're going to sell short. Such purchases in the open market may have the effect of increasing or at least limiting a decrease. So think about, we're starting to have Goldman basically supporting the price of AMC. Could have the effect of increasing or limiting a decrease in the market price of common stock. We have a structural support underneath our stock, and it's called Goldman Sachs. Think about that for a minute. I'm not even done telling you what's happening here. But in a way, yes, they're selling short, right? So I showed you that here. Goldman's first step is this forward sell. They're selling short. That's their hedge. But what are they hedging? They're hedging this short against the fact that they're going long. It's right here in their own language. Their initial hedge position, the short, is going to be substantially less. That's an important legal word, guys. Substantially less than the number of shares underlying such forward. They're going to, remember too, let's go back a second. There is explicit language before what I'm showing you there that says they're buying from the open market. So Goldman's going to forward sell. They're hedging short. That's step one. But immediately following step two, they're buying long. And they're buying a lot more long than they're hedging short. So they're going long. They're a huge company that manages risk, right? They have risk tolerance policies, risk management. And so because of that, they don't just go long. They're not like you and me that we're kind of very aggressive. We're hodlers, we're diamond handers. Most of us that are, let's say, true to this movement, we're only long. I don't own any puts. I don't own any shorts. I have calls and shares. But Goldman doesn't do that. They've got risk management policies. They're forward selling, but they're going long. So do not miss that. You've heard me kind of underline that a bunch. They're going net long. Adam has put Goldman Sachs on the board on the long side of AMC. That's what just happened. And we're not done talking about all of this. All right, so pricing. What are we getting paid for these shares? This is complicated. I told you this whole forward sell and all of that. And by the end of this, I'm going to give you a scenario of how this all works. So hang in there with me. I'm just giving you here some text basically from the filing again. You'll see all of this in the filing. So the pricing is volume weighted average price from that initial hedge. So from the moment Goldman does this forward sell, that initial hedge, until a maturity date. And we'll talk about how long is that and all of that. There is this thing called the reference price, which is kind of the price at maturity. So what does that all mean? we closed at 473 yesterday on, I don't remember right now how many million shares, but so there is a volume weighting to that price, right? Let's say that on Monday, um, I don't know, let's make this up. Let's say, just for fun, because it's a number we all like, we're at like 801. That would be a fantastic day. I'm not at all hinting. That's not a decode. I have no idea what price we'll be at. But so let's say it's at 801 at like, again, some volume of shares. And so there's a weighting you do, take the price kind of, by the volume. And then let's say for a long period of time, take every day's price and weight it by the amount of shares that move that day. Over time, you could come to an average price. And so the thing is, like, let's say you closed at even like $20 on a day that only 1 million shares sold. That day is not going to count real heavy. If there's another day where you close at like $10 on a day when 50 million shares sold. And so the overall blended average across this time is going to be what Goldman's going to pay us. Hold on to that thought. I'm going to explain that more as we go. There is a forward floor and a forward cap. So you see the second bullet here. What is happening is, to protect AMC selling shares, there is this floor that says, hey, if the stock goes down, Goldman, you can't pay us less than a certain amount that we've agreed to. Because that's what's happening here, guys. This whole forward agreement, Goldman is taking a bit of a risk against the price of our stock, and I'm going to math that out for you in a little bit, where they're kind of entering this contract with us. It's sort of in a different sequence than just buying shares. And so AMC has some risk. If the stock goes down over time, in theory, we could be paid less, because if we settle this, in the future, AMC could get paid less than, say, what the stock is at today. And so Adam has made sure that we don't go lower than some amount that they've agreed to with Goldman. So that's the forward floor. Even if the stock goes down, you will pay us a certain amount no matter what. Now, I want to pause and underline that for a minute. You guys remember what happened with Ape, right? Go back to, the end of 2022. And Adam was trying to sell Ape. And remember when it actually when Ape first was introduced, it was flying, and we halted, I don't know, what did we halt that day? 15, 20 times, some crazy amount of times. I think there's a lot of fraud and corruption by that, and behind that. And immediately when Ape went live, it was like, I don't know, $10, and it was trying to climb, and then all the halts and all that. And then what happened? It got attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked day after day after day, until Adam had to kind of sell at some pretty depressed prices. I think this is him making sure that never happens again. And he's saying, all right, let's agree that there's a floor. We will not sell less than whatever price. So Goldman has agreed to that. So that right there tells you all these like shill accounts who try to say they're holding for some stupid number that's really low to try to psyop you. They're all already wrong, because now Goldman and AMC have already agreed there's a floor they will never go below. And we're selling these 50 million shares, and they'll never go below that floor price. So Adam has locked in a no lower than this price. We don't know what that is. That wasn't published, but there is a floor price. On the flip side, one of my posts yesterday, I said Adam took a bet on us, which tells you how bullish he is. There's also a forward cap, which means, so that protects Goldman a little bit, right? But it also is, and I'm going to unpack this, like I said, with a scenario I'm going to draw for you in a minute. There is a chance that AMC actually ends up getting paid even more than the price of, say, today, from the time we start this. So if the stock goes up, remember, it's a forward contract, forward, future facing. AMC can benefit from a sale today that later actually is worth even more and gets more money. And I'll show you how that plays out. So there's also a forward cap that protects Goldman. So there's a floor that protects AMC, will never get paid less than X. There's a cap you're going to see in this filing that protects Goldman that says they never have to pay us more than Y. I don't know what those are, that floor and that cap, but the bottom line, the TLDR for me is I think Adam took a bet on us. But he also protected us from the type of attack, that the malicious, corrupt attacks we've had in the past. So he set this up. And I think ultimately, too, it allows AMC to get money now for really a future sale of stock. And so once I show you this scenario, I think you're going to get what I'm saying. Let's keep going though. So we talked about hedging short for a future buy. I've kind of already covered that. I talked about the floor and the cap. Those are also determined kind of by this multiplying a weighted average. There's some amount less than 100% for the floor, some amount more than 100% for the cap in terms of like today's price and some stuff like that. The maturity. So I talked about the time a minute ago. The maturity will be about 6 months from the completion of the initial hedging. So when Goldman says, all right, we're done with this forward selling, this shorting, then we start a clock on kind of a 6 month time period that then at the end of that, we kind of settle all accounts and there's a chance. So just think in the next 6 months, do you believe AMC's price will go up? Now think back to some of the forecast videos I've done when I've told you when the movies are coming. And in particular, Q2 of 2025 is off the charts big. We're going to see a very, very large Q2, I believe. Now that's a forecast. How many times have I told you if I give you a forecast, it can absolutely be wrong. But go look sometime at all the movies coming out April, May, June of next year. It's huge. We're going to have a lot of fun. And that is in this time period. So just think about how AMC stock might be doing in the next 6 months. And Adam being able to get money for the company right now, I'm going to show you how that happens, but then also giving himself the chance to maybe actually have a lot more money in the future. You know, if you're bullish on the future of our company, this is a great move by him. Instead of just diluting, which everybody kind of responded to, like, oh, he just sold a bunch of shares. Well, what he did is he gave us the chance to actually get a lot more, but also enabled himself and his management team to do some things now, whether that's debt pay down, some other things. We'll also talk about that. All right, so I mentioned the 6 month maturity. Now I'm showing you the screenshot that captures that. Mainly, you can just see such scheduled maturity will be approximately 6 months after completion of the initial hedging period for such forward. All right, so kind of already told you about that. So you know I've said Goldman hedges short, pays AMC. There's some cash up front. And I am just guessing that cash is the floor. Like they know we're never paying you less than this. We can give this to you up front. There's a chance though that they're not paying everything up front. I couldn't get that from the filing. It just said there's some amount they pay now. They've agreed on that in their probably contracts, obviously between AMC and Goldman. So there's some understanding between them. Talked about how Goldman will go net long. They're buying shares. So they'll benefit if the price goes up, because remember, when I say net long, that means their long position is bigger than their short position. So overall, just think of, what motivates someone like Goldman. There's nothing that motivates those guys more than money. And if they can make more money, they like that. Now think about the fact that Goldman is net long. They're going to like AMC's stock going up. So remember my post yesterday that Adam put a really huge piece on the board. He likes to have chess references. So do I. I think he put a really huge piece on the board. He put Goldman on the side of the longs. They're on our team in a way. And I don't fully want to say that. A lot of us have a lot of problems with Goldman. I am not at all saying I'm Team Goldman. But in the world of finance, sometimes it's not about emotions and how you feel and sort of purity tests. You got to find a way to win. And I think Adam is continuing to help us do that. That's my point of view on that. So 6 months go by. Last bullet here. Goldman pays AMC more if the stock goes up, or Goldman can profit here, right? So that's that. If the stock technically goes down, they get to pocket some profit. So they're kind of, that's the hedge. They've hedged short, remember. And then, so they would make money on their short side, that forward sell I keep talking about. They would make money on this transaction with AMC by pocketing the difference on basically, from the time they paid us to kind of where it ends up. And so that's why they hedged, they sold short. But again, just think of how they're net long. All right, let's go through the scenario. First of all, some hypothetical math, then, I don't know where I have it actually. Sorry, I'm looking at another screen over here. I thought I kind of had a walkthrough for you. Could have sworn I had that. I don't know. It'll come. Let's just go through the scenario and we'll get back to that. So let's just say a hypothetical $4 floor. And the reason I said that, that is not meant to signal anything. I am honestly very hopeful we're in a very bullish period and that we're going up. Um, I said this because, in theory, Goldman and AMC agreed on some floor that's below the current price. And so I'm just making this up for easy math with our 50 million shares. So don't overread into that. I like the stock. I want us to go up. I told you I'm only long, but I just wanted to do some easy math here. And remember that there's some kind of average over 6 months. So I just gave this also maybe a ceiling, and I made up that number too, completely wildly made that up. That has no grounding in any kind of technical analysis or DD or anything. But let's just go through this. All right, so Goldman Sachs pays, or GS, they pay, say, $4 a share now. Let's say it was on all the shares. I've already told you that in theory, they don't have to do all the shares through this program. Some they can just sell normally, or they even just may do less than the 50 million overall. So AMC would get 200 million bucks right off the bat if they were paying the floor up front. And I've told you as well, there's a chance that they're not paying quite that much up front. We might have this 6 months of waiting and for the rest of the money. But there's some amount now, up to say 200 million bucks in my scenario, that AMC gets right now. They can pay off debt, they can invest. They've said they're going to add more premium screens. They've said they're going to refurbish a few theaters, some things like that. So there could be investment. We'll talk a little bit in a minute too about a couple other things they could invest in. Now let's look at three scenarios. So second bullet, in 6 months, if the volume weighted average, remember I said there's this volume weighting of what does Goldman have to pay us. In 6 months, if the volume weighted average is below $4, then Goldman Sachs doesn't owe us anything more. But we don't get any less either. We got that upfront money and we're done. In this scenario, I had him pay us the whole floor up front. Again, I just keep saying I don't know that that's how this will work, but let's pretend here that happened. So in scenario one here, stock goes down, we get attacked. There's all kinds of fraud and manipulation, as we've seen. We don't get any more, but at least we got the $200 million. And frankly, in a way, we made money because we sold at 4, even though it ended up being below that, right? So that's Adam protecting us again. So well done by our management team. Well, let's say it went up to $5 in those 6 months. Pretty reasonable. Frankly, a lot of us would still say it's deeply undervalued at that price. Especially we're talking 6 months from now, when the box office is going to be higher than anything you've seen our entire time here. Well, if it even just went up by $1 in this period from the floor, I'm talking about from the floor. So from this $4 a share they pay us, let's say we land at some, again, weighted average of $5 by that time, we would get another 50 million bucks. They'd have to settle up and pay us $1 for all of these 50 million shares. So $50 million. Now AMC at the end of it, basically, even though what we closed on Friday at 473, it would be like AMC sold the shares for $5. Pretty cool. Okay, well, anything above that, so for every dollar above that, AMC gets another 50 million bucks, right? So if we had some squeeze or big run, or say we even just got to some sort of normal valuation and we averaged out at like $30 by then or something, yes, that's a big run, but look at my other videos about the value of AMC stock based on fundamentals. We would end up getting 1.3 billion more. So again, just for every dollar, kind of add 50 million bucks and go as high as you want to go. But remember that it's an average from kind of today until 6 months from now, based on volumes, what ends up being AMC's average price. And so just you could play with math yourself on that. It's unlikely the ceiling is that high. That's the kind of third bullet down here. Remember that Goldman protects itself. There was an agreed on cap. So I don't know what that cap is. So there's a chance I'm exaggerating this scenario here that we would never get paid $30 a share. But we don't know. And I've kind of said over and over at the bottom, remember it's a weighted average price. Before we're done, I'm going to kind of give you some interpretations then of what that all means. And again, why I'm bullish. So some thoughts. There's a lot of language about possible impacts to stock price. So you'll see that in there. I've already talked, though, that there's language about how it could impact the stock price downward or kind of cap some runs. But there's also language about how it can press the stock upwards. So you'll see both. That's a bit balanced. And just remember that this is legalese. It's boilerplate language. If you don't know the term boilerplate, it's just like standard. Every time you have a certain type of contract, there's some set of things that are said in that contract that just are kind of always the same. And so this is AMC and Goldman both protecting themselves and putting certain words in there that the lawyers made them put in there. But I would just say, first off, to me, any language about the stock price in there is mostly kind of, I'm ignoring it because we already have nonstop pressure on our price action. That's not some new thing. And just focus on the fact that Goldman's going net long. That's where I focused. By using a forward agreement, second bullet here, Adam ensured we would not be nonstop attacked. I've kind of explained that, so you get where I'm coming from there. And on the third bullet, so AMC gets some funds now, but left the door open that we might even get more later, but we're not going to get less. We could get more. So that's where I'm saying he placed a bet on us. And he has the security of getting funds now and of having that floor that will never get less than a certain amount of money. But actually, this thought that we could get more later, he got Goldman Sachs, keep saying GS, whatever, goes net long and can profit off the run. So again, yes, they can make money off of the short. They are a forward seller here. I've been very clear about that. But they're going net long. And so I just think all you got to do is game theory this thing out and think about that as a pretty big chess piece on the board. Yeah, that's not small. All right, a few other things. I want to connect a sort of I don't know, it almost would seem disconnected, but it clicked in my brain last night as well. Besides Goldman just being a huge player financially and why this is kind of so important, go look up something you can see here. So first, okay, let me back up. I mentioned you can find the hashtag The Great Unwinding from me, and you find a whole lot of posts of mine. You can also look through my highlighted posts on X. Okay, so start there. You'll see a lot of things I think about the tokens. If you're new to this channel, if you're just coming here because there's been a lot of noise on AMC and GameStop the last week or two, you need to know that there were these tokens that were created in January of 2021, the night before the buy button was removed. It's all related to Binance and some other companies like CM Equity AG and something called Uniswap. And it's connected to Infinite Liquidity and Virtu and Interactive Brokers. And then you get FTX. And so I've told the whole story of all of this. I'm not going to do that here in this video. But there's so many connections for tokens and cheating and stock manipulation and naked shorting and all these things. It's all connected. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of this whole journey. And it happened to GameStop and it happened to AMC and it happened to a few other meme stocks that basically these tokens were created as sort of a cheat code. Okay. And the reason I'm bringing that back up is it connects to a smart contract on the Ethereum blockchain called ERC20s. All right. And so I'm using some code language here, but I'm also telling you a little bit about it. ERC20s are connected to this whole conversation on tokens and 2021 and this hashtag you'll find from me on X, The Great Unwinding. And I have a whole playlist here on YouTube called The Great Unwinding. So if you want to learn more about that, check my highlighted tweets, check this hashtag, check that playlist. You can get a lot more information from me on all of that. Okay, so I'm not going to go into that on this video. But here's something kind of almost unrelated, but I'm going to relate it back. Note this tweet, and I'm not like pushing this account or anything. It's someone I've seen for a while on AMC. I don't mean to like pump them, but I do want to just kind of give credit to the fact that they were the one who tweeted this. And when I saw this, it's an old tweet, but I saw it again last night. It just kind of happened across my feed. And I thought, wait a second. I made a connection I'd never connected myself before. So, kudos to you, Mr. Kilo. Goldman Sachs was part of a tokenization push with global banks. And you all know that I am not for this. I am against CBDCs. I've been very loud about that. But what I want you to catch, first off, is a few things. So it's Goldman Sachs, right? What have I been talking about that Adam just got on the board? It's the Ethereum blockchain. It's 2021, and it's these ERC20s. That is a lot of connections. Yes, these are dots. Yes, I'm now speaking in speculation. So tinfoil alert, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, you go, all right, we had the tokens in 2021. They're these smart contracts. You'll see a lot. Now that will actually give you a little bit of an unlock on some cryptic posts and videos I've had where I've talked about smart contracts and I've sort of taunted some of our opponents a little bit. I said some of their smart contracts don't look so smart. This is what I was talking about. These ERC20s related to AMC and GameStop and on the Ethereum blockchain. And it's all part of that great unwinding that Bitcoin is also connected to. And in this case, Bitcoin is like on our side, let's call it. That's my belief. It's my thesis. You don't have to agree with me. So all of this then connecting, and I'm just using some cryptic language here. ERC20, a sleeping beauty that some are afraid will awake. Blockchains keep a record in time. Smart contracts might be like a DeLorean. GS connection to tokens, and CME group, different from CME, from CM Equity AG. So a lot going on there. I'm just drawing your eyes. Apologies for not completely explaining it, but the Goldman Sachs connection, the ERC20 connection, the tokens connection are filing this week. Goldman going long. I believe we might be watching what I have told you would happen. We had Bitcoin run. We have Goldman going long. We have the ERC20s. Everything's coming together. This might be a little bit of a, I don't know, a self pat on the back, but I don't know who else has ever told you about all this. And all of this fits what I've told you for more than a year now about the Great Unwinding. So I'm just sitting here going, oh my gosh, we might be seeing it play out. And there's going to be some people who look pretty dumb for having tried to attack me on this. Randall. Oh, sorry, just coughing there. I would love to name a lot more names, and I will someday when I try to dunk on everybody. All right, so some watch items. Watch for GS's total position, right? So let's start watching. Filings come a long ways after, right? Like some of you guys go and look at the 13Fs and you try to look at all of, let's say, their long positions, shares and calls versus their short positions. So they might short some shares. They might also have puts. Let's just kind of look at their net position. That might take a while though. So like if you know the 13Fs, sometimes you don't even have to file those for 30 days after an event. So we might not know right away, but they said explicitly in the forward contract with AMC that they are, I showed you that screenshot. They're buying way more shares than what they're shorting, at least in this program, let's say. Watch for news from AMC on debt paydowns. Remember, we're getting cash up front. Watch for news on capital expenditures, so investments. More Dolby screens, more IMAX screens, more XL screens. There's a few different brandings of premium screens that AMC has said they're going to grow. By the way, we have one of those XL screens at my AMC, and I love it. When there's, kind of big movies, I pay a little bit more sometimes to go see the movie on that extra large screen. So that's kind of fun. And, let's just hope that sort of continues to improve AMC's margins, basically. There's a high margin there's a reason it's called premium. People pay a premium for those screens. Keep an eye on Bitcoin as a battering ram. So I mentioned, we hit, 100,000 plus dollars per Bitcoin, and then Kitty shows up, Adam does the filing, a lot's going on, right? So I do believe this is continuing. I already talked a lot about the Great Unwinding, so both the hashtag on X and my YouTube playlist, you can go find those. Kitty's return, obviously we're watching the forward offering, a lot going on there. GameStop earnings coming up, that could be a big deal, which reminds me, so both for AMC and GameStop, one more watch item, and I'm just showing you a couple of, one particularly cryptic tweet I had all the way back in May, and then the one on the right is a little less cryptic. If you kind of piece it together, you can understand it. Basically, I'm just saying I'm watching to see if either of our two beloved companies starts to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. If you've watched, one of the reasons, so just side note on Bitcoin, all of this price action is before the US government, the federal government, has hinted at starting to have Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. That has not started. There are, I believe, 11 US states who are now kind of working on laws to make Bitcoin a strategic reserve in their states. So imagine what it looks like when 11 states and the US federal government start gobbling up Bitcoin. Meanwhile, you know that Saylor is continuing. You have seen rumblings that Microsoft may start. There's Marathon, they're a Bitcoin miner. They have been purchasing Bitcoin, not just mining it, also purchasing it. Genius Group, that's a funny one to me because I believed they were not good when they showed up, and I still generally believe that, but they're buying Bitcoin. Semler Scientific, way back in 2020, I was invested in them actually. I had some shares and I did very well. I actually sold at the top with them. That was before my introduction to all things AMC. I used to own like 40 different tickers and was an investor. I'll come back to that when we're done. For me, I'm waiting till we win, but then I'll maybe share things with you guys after we win. Anyway, Semler Scientific's been buying Bitcoin. There's a whole slew of companies lining up to start purchasing Bitcoin. There are more nations. You can go out there and find a few more nations that are starting to buy Bitcoin. So this thing could get real weird before the end. But this was me all the way back in May, basically saying, I wonder if AMC will buy Bitcoin. And then the other one is in June, I think, when GameStop, right? Like we get trolled on AMC diluting and all of that. Cohen, RC diluted in the middle of the last GameStop run and did very well, right? Like I'm not here to troll that. He got billions of dollars for the company. And so what I was saying is here's what I would do with it. Basically, part Saylor meant I'd buy Bitcoin with a big chunk of that. Part Buffett meant I'd buy a company, and diversify in terms of operations and revenue streams. Let's see. RC's got all kinds of plans. He's not asking me for coaching and he doesn't need it. Let's see what he does with all of that. But this is just me sort of saying, hey, if you see these companies buy Bitcoin, I was trying to tell you months in advance. I'm going to show you then something that some of you, like I said, I've been quiet on YouTube for a while just because I've been busy. So you would have missed some posts. Just proof that I'm a real boy or a real man, I guess. These are all kind of older pictures. A lot of these are from more than 10 years ago, some like from 15 years ago or something. So because some of you only maybe follow me on YouTube, I'm just giving you a chance to see them. I like getting outdoors. I was showing a bit of who I am. Also, in a way, at the posts where I was sharing these, I was kind of trolling the shorts because I was like, listen, you guys think you can intimidate me and push me around. If you're not on X, you don't see how often I get attacked and stuff. Even if you are, a lot of times I hide those and delete them and block the people who do that. But, they don't like me. They like to try to surround me and intimidate me and sort of, I don't know, distract me and whatever. And so I was trying to show them, like, listen, you need to know who you're dealing with. I'm not going to be easily pushed around. If I'm a dude who will go out and dig caves in the snow and sleep in it, and I've successfully raised 3 children who are well-adjusted and are amazing people. Yeah, I'm not too worried about someone saying mean things about me online. So go ahead and troll me here on YouTube. Go ahead and troll me on X. I will deal with you. And frankly, you're not going to like, where things go because I've been getting stronger while you all keep trying to take bites at me. All right, so some last thoughts. What do you think? Obviously, a nod there. Is it MOAS or is it actually GOAS? Is God in the house? 97 reasons NASA might have a rocket for us. The Undertaker ringing 117 bells while some are getting squeezed by vendors. All right, and then let's go less cryptic. So I've told you, Goldman Sachs, GS, is on the board in a new way. Adam bet on the future of AMC. I think there's starting to be more and more unity between Bitcoin, GameStop, and AMC. And the most important thing that you all know, we will win. So let's go.